guys. I'm going to basically just cover what I'm expecting to see or what we could expect to see moving into Friday for our live session, as well as getting into the London session just before that. So I'm going to start with GU. GU is obviously trading a series of lower lows and lower highs. So if you look at this right now, you can see that we're kind of getting down into, let's go down onto the daily, up onto the daily rather. You can see that we are starting to tap into sort of these extreme daily demand zones. We're starting to get half decent reactions. All this to say that I don't necessarily know that we're going to expect to see some form of a new high formed from here. We need to essentially see a heavy order flow shift on the daily, as well as a confirmed new higher low, which would be essentially going like this, coming down, and then producing a new high to be able to essentially solidify that we have bullish order flow on the higher time frames. If and when that happens, then we can start to reevaluate. As it stands right now, I'm essentially looking at this as a break of structure. Obviously, we're getting some movement that's happened shortly after that. So now it's just a matter of jumping down onto lower time frames and being able to kind of decipher the details a little wee bit. So if you look at this, we get a nice clean close underneath. The structural level that caused that was up here. You can see that we do come from an area of a sweep. So in theory, it should technically be a strong level. Anything can happen, and I don't want to give you a wishy-washy sort of analysis, but ultimately looking for sells, in my opinion, would be favorable, provided that we're aligning with higher time frame intentions. So if I was to look at this right now, what I would look at is likely going to be this entire range as sort of like a supply area, looking for some form of a realignment on the lower time frame. So I would probably band this off as sort of like my supply region. Furthermore, if we tapped into something along the lines of this, came back down, I would then possibly look to potentially trade this short. The other option is that we tap into the zone and we get a poor delivery and then sweep up and maybe possibly liquidate the rest of this to come up here to then look for some potential sells. As it's developing right now, obviously we don't have a whole lot of liquidity to go after in the market. We want to be able to see some form of liquidity sort of print along the side of or along the lines of something like this, see a liquidation of the high, snap back into an order flow low, and then possibly look to take this into a weak level. But again, we need further development. So as it stands right now, I'm just kind of standing by. I think my only alert that I would really want to set would be something along the lines of this, just saying that ultimately if we enter into sort of like this supply range up in this premium of the leg, I would say that this would be my only area I would really be interested in. So I would just kind of mark this up and say HTF supply mitigation. Okay, so something along the lines of this, and then annotating this, I would just go something like this. Obviously, we're going to want to see how it develops in order for it to gain relevance, but this is just like the bare bones analysis. So something like this, we would essentially be trading this counter order flow, pro trend, so that is only going to show up on the 15 if I'm not mistaken. There it is, pro trend. Okay, sort of counter order flow. So we want to see a 15-minute realignment. Obviously, we want to see all kinds of other things develop before we can actually start solidifying our bias to take these higher time frame sells. But this is kind of the bare bones version of it. So getting now into, I think we're going to end up dropping GJ. I don't want to keep doing all these different pairs. I think we'll stay aligned with gold, euro, and GBP USD. I know they're pretty heavily correlated, but I do want to keep some attention to detail and not be too dispersed over a bunch of different pairs. So GU is covered. The next one is going to be EU, and you'll notice that, right now, if we were to map this out as your structural leg, and this is our order flow shift, I mean, obviously we've come into our higher time frame supply. Obviously, we know all of this. I'm still reluctant to think that this is going to take out a new high. I think it's possible. I do think it's a lot more likely to see a new low formed from here. I think this is just the depletion and mitigation of the last of the orders, and then possibly see some new territorial lows claimed, and then from there we can start looking at potential higher time frame pullbacks, as well as some shorts if and when we come up to a pro trend level. So right now, in terms of sort of like POY selection, this is a little bit difficult. Reason why is because we have 2 weak areas. This is a weak area based on the fact that expectational order flow was to take out this low, and then now we've seen our 4-hour order flow shift, which essentially deems this area as a potential area to look for some buys. So right now, looking for sells. Looking at the lower time frames, we'll look at this in more detail tomorrow once we're on the charts together. But yeah, I'm looking at this entire range as sort of like a supply zone. If we see a liquidation and a change of character, we could then start to play this into at least this demand. I know it's technically counter trend, but it's pro trend with the higher time frame. So this is kind of where things kind of get a little bit tricky with maneuvering around in that flow chart. But ultimately, the bottom line is if and when we see our confirmations and we do see a structural low give way aligned with the 4-hour move, then we could potentially take this down, take a good bit of our profits off at something like this, and then potentially even aim a little bit lower depending on how this sort of develops. So that's just my personal opinion, and yeah, we're just going to play into liquid regions as well as the next reaction that we can expect from the market. That way we don't have to worry about holding our trades too long, and we can extract money from the market. So right now, like I said, the only real interest I have is going to be sort of sitting up in this range. Doesn't even necessarily mean it's going to hold. I'm just looking at how this is sort of reacting just before this. We do see a very high liquidation of these built up mitigations, and now ultimately we just need to watch how this sort of develops further. Ideally, like I said, my ideal setup would be something along the lines of this, inducing this high, getting early sellers wiped out, seeing a clear order flow shift, coming back up in, and then taking this sell down. For all you old retail guys, this would be the textbook head and shoulders pattern. But anyways, just a joke. But yeah, I'm ultimately looking for some form of liquidity to get taken from the market here. Once it happens, if it does, then we could potentially look, depending on how it develops in this leg, to potentially start taking these sells aligned with higher time frame intention. So that's just my thoughts. What else do we got? We got gold. So gold, let's just get rid of all of this stuff. Okay, so gold is taken off. This is kind of what we had called out a little bit earlier in the week, as well as last week. Was it last week? No, just this week. Came into higher time frame demand. We've seen the order flow shift. We've seen a structure point let go, built liquidity to basically be able to put us into the discount of the POYs, liquidated the lows, boom, 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 all these things happen. So right now, the next move in the market is essentially we're going to be sitting here waiting to see once gold essentially breaks through these highs. Once it does, if we see some form of an interaction zone, we can then start to maybe potentially look for this to continue in this direction. But until we get further development, there's no POY that I would map out right this second. I would not be looking to trade long from here just yet. I would want to see the higher time frame shift back in our favor, push through, and then potentially we could also look for sells here if and when structure aligns, as well as the potential higher time frame longs to be able to take this into deeper portions of this leg aligned with daily order flow. So right now, no POY, super clear from me, at least on gold. I'm not looking to trade it until we get some further development. So hopefully you guys understand. And as it stands right now, the two favorable positions that I would look to get myself in would be EU as well as GU. So again, I'll just put higher time frame mitigation here, HTF supply mitigation, supply mitigation, and that's it. And then I would just jump down onto my 15, and we would call this a potential for a pro trend higher time frame but counter order flow. I know our trend has technically changed. Now, one of the ways that I sort of see trend is that a trend is very much something that happens repeatedly, right? So we've repeatedly made highs, lows, highs, lows, highs, lows, and if we've just liquidated all of these late sellers, to me the trend is still bearish until we've punched in a new higher low and a higher high, which would confirm that this is more than just a liquidation, and it is in fact something that is happening repeatedly. So when you think of the word trend, just remember it's not just the first shift in order flow. It doesn't mean that we can't look to capitalize on this move if and when it happens. It just means that you need to bank on the fact that this has only happened one time for us, and ultimately we're looking for more confirmations. Some of the confirmations would be maybe a 4-hour realignment here, having a bunch of liquidity to go after, and then we can start looking to take this up into EOF highs. So as it stands right now, like I said, I have a sell bias in terms of what I'm looking at on EU. Ideally, I would love to see something along the lines of this get swept out and then possibly see criteria build at this level. So this would be technically a pro trend move, depending on how you sort of look at things, of course, and we could bank on this based on the fact that we do have higher time frame bearish order flow. So I'll just map this guy out and put this right here, and again, same thing, we would be looking at a pro trend counter order flow move in and around this area as we have bullish order flow going into this level, and then obviously looking to take this into potential new lows, as well as targeting just demand levels where we can expect some form of a reaction. So that's it for just kind of our daily look ahead. We'll reevaluate if and when we get to these levels, and we will basically see what we need to do for tomorrow when we jump on the live. Be mindful of the fact that we do have 8:45 a.m. Eastern time news. I believe it's the Fed speech by Powell. So just be mindful of this when we get into our session, and we'll just have to keep an eye on what's happening with price in relation to the dollar. So have a good day, guys, and looking forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.